So we saw just a few days ago the International Criminal Court issuing their ridiculous, absurd, double standards, evil arrest warrant for the Prime Minister of the one and only Jewish state, Benjamin Netanyahu, for the crime of existing. Because that's all they've done. That's all Israel's doing. They're not doing genocide. They are protecting themselves from a genocidal enemy. And the Jews, as has always been the case throughout history, the anti-Semites find the Jew guilty of existing. And no, it is not genocide. It's not war crimes. And I've just watched any JTV video in the last year. They will be explained to you if I can keep repeating it, and I will keep repeating it. But for the sake of this video, I want to focus on something else, which is the world's reaction. Now, we saw in the days after the arrest warrant that there were countries that were signatories to the ICC Rome Statute or Treaty, whatever it's called, saying that they're going to have to honour this. They will have to honour the absurd arrest warrant. Of course, Joe Biden, America, is not a signatory to the ICC. They said it was absurd. He said it was outrageous, this arrest warrant of Netanyahu. And France said they were going to have to comply. But now it looks like they're changing their tone. Look at the words of France. On the government website, it says, France will respect its international obligations on the understanding that the Rome Statute requires full cooperation with the International Criminal Court, and also provides that a state cannot be required to act in a manner inconsistent with its obligations under international law with respect to the immunities of states not party to the ICC. Such immunities apply to Prime Minister Netanyahu and other relevant ministers and will need to be taken into consideration should the ICC request their arrest and surrender. So what they're saying is Israel's not a signatory to the ICC. So part of the law is that they can't be expected to act among another state that is not a member of the ICC and under their jurisdiction. Israel had the good sense not to sign up to the ICC alongside America. So they continue, in accordance with the historic friendship that binds France to Israel, two democracies committed to the rule of law and respect for a professional and independent justice system, France intends to continue to work closely with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the other Israeli authorities to achieve peace and security for all in the Middle East. So this is a real slap in the face to the ICC. In no way is painting Prime Minister Netanyahu as in any way bad. It's basically saying, with all due respect, we're not going to do anything about it. And frankly, we consider ourselves friends, a historic friendship that binds France to Israel. You know, France actually, I think, was one of Israel's first key allies. Of course, they've been a bit floppy at times, but they're really leaning into that. It's remarkable to see. I wonder why that is. Why have they decided to take this tone? Is it because the new incoming American administration, even Biden himself, but the new incoming American administration is deeply hostile to the ICC? For all I know, might try to put in efforts to shut it down or boycott, I don't know. And maybe they're worried about that, who knows? But it also looks like, even from a purely legal standpoint, it's not right. There's no justification for other ICC members to arrest Netanyahu. Again, we're just talking legally. Of course, morally, it's absurd that we're even talking about this, but legally, it's interesting. This is David Wolfson over in the UK, Lord David Wolfson, who is a barrister. He's a Conservative member of the House of Lords, and he's the Shadow Attorney General. Okay? And he wrote a letter to the British government, who also said we're going to comply with the International Criminal Court ruling, where he pointed out these legal facts. And I want to share them with you because he actually said, it's interesting that France is saying this, because he, a few days prior to France's statement, wrote this letter highlighting these legal issues. And I want to read it to you. For those who are a bit more into legal issues, you'll find this interesting. So he wrote, Dear Attorney General, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against Israeli Prime Minister and former Defence Minister Gallant. The government's response to these warrants has been confused, inconsistent and unclear. The purpose of this letter, further to the letter on political issues from my colleagues, the Shadow Foreign and Justice Secretaries, is to ascertain and clarify the government's legal position on these important matters. The legal background. The UK is a state party to the ICC. The UK signed the Rome Statute in November 1998, ratified it in October 2001. Those matters give rise to international law obligations on the UK as set out in the Rome Statute. However, as a dualist state, the UK's international law obligations do not form part of its domestic law, unless and until they are incorporated into domestic law by means of an Act of Parliament. In 2001, Parliament passed the International Criminal Court Act 2001. The Act imposes obligations in domestic law and also provides for when and how our domestic courts should enforce an ICC arrest warrant. Customary international law recognises an immunity ration persona. This form of immunity grants officials and representatives protection from prosecution based on their position or office. It extends to heads of government such as prime ministers. The rules on immunity are stipulated in Articles 27 and 98 of the Rome Statute. Article 27 of the Rome Statute provides that an immunity attaching to the official capacity of a person, whether under national or international law, shall not prevent the ICC from exercising its jurisdiction over that person. However, Article 98.1 provides that the ICC may not proceed with a request to a state to surrender a person if that would require the requested state to act inconsistently with its obligations under international law with respect to the immunity of that person. When Parliament considered the Act implementing the Rome Statute, the then Labour government provided an explanatory note explaining the provisions of the Act, including the position as to immunity. The explanatory note confirmed the position set out above, and explained that the effect of these articles of the Rome Statute is mirrored in sections 23.1 and 2 of the Act. See paragraph 47 of the explanatory note. The terms of sections 23.1 and 2 of the Act are clear and unambiguous in distinguishing, for the purposes of immunities, state parties to the ICC from non-state parties. Further, the immunity enjoyed by a serving Prime Minister as a matter of customary international law is included within section 23.6 of the Act. This means that a state party to the ICC, such as the UK, has agreed, by ratifying the Rome Statute, that the immunity of its officials and representatives will not prevent their arrest and surrender to the ICC. Israel, however, is not a party to the Rome Statute. In respect of such non-state parties, the explanatory note explained, consistently with the scheme of the Rome Statute, that the immunity of officials and representatives of such states would remain intact, unless an express waiver were given by the non-state party concerned, i.e. Israel, to the ICC. Accordingly, and so far as concerns Mr. Netanyahu as a serving Prime Minister of a non-state party, his immunity as a head of government remains unless and until Israel waives that immunity. The effect of such immunity, recognised in customary international law, is that the UK would be in breach of its international obligations to honour such immunity were the ICC arrest warrant to be enforced against Mr. Netanyahu in the UK. Further, as a matter of domestic law, the effect of Section 23 of the Act is that an ICC arrest warrant should not be enforced by a domestic court against Mr. Netanyahu as a serving Prime Minister of a non-state party. The ICC rulings in Prosecutor versus Bashir. The ICC considered Article 98 of the Rome Statute and the question of immunity in a number of decisions in the Bashir case, arising out of Jordan's failure to arrest Sudan's Omar al-Bashir. The ICC could and should have decided that al-Bashir had no immunity because a resolution of the UN Security Council trumped his immunity under customary international law, a situation expressly contemplated by Section 235 of the Act and explained in paragraph 49 of the explanatory notes. But the ICC held that as a matter of customary international law, al-Bashir had no immunity under Article 27.2, notwithstanding that Sudan was a non-state party. The decisions in Bashir have been severely criticised by leading international law scholars, not least because the ICC does not give effect to the critical distinction between state parties and non-state parties in Article 98. It would also be seriously contrary to the interests of the UK if we acted as if the Bashir decisions correctly state customary international law. Immunity as set out in customary international law is a key protection for the UK against lawfare aimed at our officials and representatives. But the government need not take a position on whether it agrees with the ICC's decision in Bashir. That is because the terms of the Act, i.e. the UK's implementing legislation, are clear and are also based on the UK's settled understanding of the customary international law rules on immunities. The terms of the Act cannot be read down or limited by subsequent, especially if erroneous, decisions of the ICC. The government must act in accordance with and not contrary to an Act of Parliament. That remains the case even if it means that the ICC again erroneously were to hold that the UK was in breach of the Rome Statute. As noted above, and as confirmed by the explanatory notes, the effect of the Act is that the immunity of an official of a non-state party such as the serving Prime Minister of Israel is unaffected by and indeed endorsed by the Act. Questions for the government, which of course said we'll abide by the ICC decision. This is the government of the UK. Questions. Equivocation as to whether the government would or would not enforce, via court proceedings, the ICC arrest warrant against Netanyahu is not a tenable position. I therefore invite you to confirm the government's position on the following important legal questions. Do you agree that the International Criminal Court Act 2001, as explained in the explanatory notes, requires the UK to give effect to Mr. Netanyahu's immunity under customary international law as a serving Prime Minister of a non-state party? Do you agree that the government is obliged to act in accordance with and not contrary to the International Criminal Court Act 2001, regardless of the subsequent ICC jurisprudence, including its decision in Bashir? I trust you will be able to provide a clear and unambiguous response to these questions. If, however, you have any doubt about the correct legal position, you should seek an immediate and authoritative decision from the High Court on the ambit and effect of the relevant legislation, i.e. Section 23 of the Act. Any such application should be made in good time before the Prime Minister next invites Mr. Netanyahu as the serving Prime Minister of an ally of the UK to Downing Street. So that's his letter, and that, for those of you who are interested in, legal issues, will give you some food for thought. But I have to say, you know what, even if every law in the world said that Israel is guilty and terrible and genocidal, that would mean that the law was wrong. Laws aren't inherently moral, as we know all too well from history. And we clearly see that in the case of the ICC. Just as the courts of Nazi Germany were practicing and upholding an immoral system, so too this judgment of the ICC represents an immoral, biased, I would call it destination judgment, because they knew before they even began the judicial case that they wanted to accuse Israel of genocide, of being Nazis, basically. Because what's the inevitable conclusion of concluding that someone is a Nazi? That means, well, what did we do to the Nazis? We had to wipe them out. So what they're saying, what Karim Khan is saying, is he basically wants to do everything he can to undermine and annihilate Israel, God forbid. Of course, that's not going to happen, but that's what's going on here, and we shouldn't make any bones about that. We should be honest that that's what's really going on here. The other obvious message is that the world has lost its way, morally, politically, and all these things, and there's a real vacuum in our great institutions, these NGOs, these judicial systems, the UN, academia, celebrity culture, the media. There's a total loss of moral clarity, calling good evil and evil good, which is why the Jewish people and Israel, they know they've got their eye on them, but their critique is wrong. But their notion that they should be looking to the Jews for their moral behaviour, that's the one thing they've actually got right. Their critique is wrong. But they know, subconsciously perhaps, that they're going to get their actual moral direction and exemplary moral behaviour and moral vision and moral teaching from the Jews. So given that no one else is able to provide it anymore, it's time for us as a nation to start providing that to the whole world.
If you've made it so far in this video, I have a request for you. JTV has been having a really big impact in spreading the truth about Israel and creating positive associations with the Jewish people, Judaism, and Israel. We've really grown a lot, particularly in the last year, and we're having a really significant impact, both for Jews and non-Jews. But I really want to take JTV to the next level so we can start to compete with the other big online media beasts that are often peddling anti-Israel content. And the way we're going to do that is to scale even faster. So I'd love to build a team where we have other presenters doing shows like me, let's start doing documentaries, supplementary content, animated content, etc., etc. And to do that, I'd like to build a bit of a team. So what we're going to do is we're going to do one fundraising day, just one, where we try and build up some funding in order to fund such a team. Now, to do that, it's going to obviously require people to get involved. And I'm wondering if you would consider, if you're watching JTV content and appreciate what we do and want to help partner with us in taking this to the next level and spreading the truth farther and wider than ever before, I wonder if you'd consider partnering with us simply by running a mini page on the fundraiser that we do, where you just reach out to your contacts on that day that we choose to fundraise and see if they'll all chip in. If you'd be up for doing that, of which I would be so grateful, then please click on the Google form link in the video description of this video, where you can simply just put in a few contact details. It'll be a very small commitment, as I say, literally just one day that we'll all agree upon as a collective community. But the impact is going to be so big. There's such strength in numbers. If we all pull together and do this, we can take this to the next level. And as I say, all of us can partner together in bringing and spreading the truth to the whole world. So please do consider clicking on that link, filling in the form, and I'll be in touch very soon to talk about the next steps. Small commitment, but a big impact.
Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.